On this video, I am going to be reading 1 Peter chapter 4 with a brief commentary or running commentary as we go through the text. We come now to where Peter is encouraging his readers to abstain from the lust and the lifestyle that they had, and then go on with a fervent love in their life and love for one another. It reads, "Therefore, since Christ has suffered in the flesh, arm yourself also with the same purpose, because he who has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin." I think what he's talking about here is you died to the sin nature and letting sin control your life, so as to live the rest of the time in the flesh, no longer in the lust of men, but for the will of God. For the time already past is sufficient for you to have carried out the desire of the Gentiles, having pursued a course of sensuality, lust, drunkenness, carousing, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries. In other words, your past life was characterized by drunkenness, sensuality, carousing, drinking parties, idolatries. He said, do away with that now. You've died to that in Christ. In all this, those that you had done this with before, they are surprised that you do not continue to run with them. And they're surprised with that unto the same excesses of dissipation, and they malign you. Often what happens in the Christian life, when you give yourself to Christ and lead a godly life or seek to, your former companions don't understand it because they're still doing it. And they think you're just being judgmental or you're trying to be holier than thou, as they say. But basically, on account of this, they give account. In other words, they malign you, but they will give an account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. Everybody's going to give an account someday for the life that we live. And so he's encouraging his audience and us today to lead a godly life. For the gospel has, for this purpose, been preached even to those who are dead, that though they are judged in the flesh as men, they may live in the spirit according to the will of God. I think what he's saying here, those who are spiritually dead have received the gospel, and as they have done that, they're to live in the spirit working in their lives according to the will of God. And that should be the purpose of all of us, to live a godly life, having experienced our death with Christ. He goes on, the end of all things is near. Therefore, be of sound judgment and sober spirit for the purpose of prayer. The end of all things was near in Peter's day. How much more can we say the end of all things surely must be near in all that we are seeing? Above all, keep fervent in your love for one another. Notice his focus again on love, fervent love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. How we need that today. We live in a time where we see anything but love. People attack each other. They are very abusive in their words. How we need love today. Be hospitable to one another without complaint. We're to open up our lives and invite people into them, being hospitable, Peter's saying. And as each one has received a special gift, employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. We all have received spiritual gifts, and everyone, even though you may not be the most popular, you may not get 1,000 likes, for example. The bottom line is we're to be faithful and use the gift that God has given us. Whoever speaks is to do so as one who is speaking the utterances of God. Whoever serves is to do so as one who is serving by the strength which God supplies, so that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. What a beautiful summary here. Whoever speaks, some have a speaking gift, like being a teacher or having a prophetic gift. Whoever does that is to speak the utterances of God. And whoever serves is to be faithful to do that with the strength which God supplies. Serving can be in a practical way, helping others, serving others. We're to do that with the strength that God supplies, so that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. To whom, and I love this concluding benediction, to whom belongs the glory and dominion forever and ever. Speaking of Jesus Christ, truly, the glory and dominion belongs to him. He then goes on to talk about the sufferings that we are to share with Christ in this life. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you, which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange thing is happening to you. Peter's telling his audience, be aware that there will be testing, and don't be surprised as though this is some strange thing. And it's hard because we all go through that. When we go through testing, we say, why? I mean, it's strange. We don't understand it many times. Job didn't. But to the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing, so that also at the revelation of his glory, you may rejoice with exultation. What a wonderful statement he's making here. Even in suffering, keep on rejoicing, looking forward to that time when you will rejoice when Christ returns. So if you are reviled for the name of Christ, Peter's saying to his audience, you are blessed, because the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you. In other words, if you are verbally attacked and reviled because of your faith in Christ, he's saying the glory of God rests upon you. Make sure, though, that none of you suffer as a murderer or a thief or evildoer or a troublesome meddler. In other words, don't suffer by doing evil, is really what he's saying. But if anyone suffers as a Christian, he is not to be ashamed, but to glorify God in his name. In other words, I think what Peter's saying is believers will suffer as Christians, but in the midst of all that, one is not to be ashamed, but to glorify God. For it is time for judgment to begin with the household of God. And if it begins with us first, what will be the outcome of those who do not obey the gospel of God? We need to realize that we're all going to face God's judgment someday. And if it begins with the household of God, how awful it will be for those who do not obey the gospel, is Peter's point. And if it is with difficulty that the righteous be saved because of all the struggles in life and suffering, what will become of the godless man and the sinner? What becomes of the godless man and sinner if the righteous are saved with very much difficulty? Therefore, those also who suffer according to the will of God, shall entrust their souls to a faithful Creator in doing what is right. What a beautiful thought here at the conclusion of chapter 4, that those who suffer according to the will of God can entrust their souls to a faithful Creator who is doing what is right. But it's very easy to become disillusioned in suffering and in going through trials that everyone goes through. All believers will go through it, Peter is saying. But we can entrust ourselves and our souls to a faithful Creator who will do what is right. All things working together for good to those that love God, to those that are called according to his purpose. So, what a beautiful chapter, focusing upon living a life of holiness with love, a fervent love, and even in suffering, to cast our care to the Lord, knowing that he is a faithful Creator, a faithful helper.